I would like to talk about creativity when it comes to learning and the art of learning in this live video. We had a meeting with students today, and a student gave me this book as a gift, Spark Joy by Marie Kondo. We've spoken about this book many times, and I was very happy to receive the gift. So I decided to do what many of my students do when they say they practice their English skills. A lot of students say, I read a lot of fiction, I watch a lot of movies, but my English skills do not really improve. What am I doing wrong? I'm doing so many things. I'm learning words. I have my notebook with vocabulary. Usually it's a list, it's a dense list of words in the English language that people think they need to know. Usually it's a list of new words. So they say they're doing that. They're reading books all the time. They're watching Netflix shows all the time. It's just not working for them. And here's what I decided to do. I opened the book as we were driving home. I opened the book on the page, I'm not sure what page it was, but I happened to open a section about organizing your kitchen. That's interesting for me, so I started reading how to organize your kitchen. I read 5 pages maybe, and I understood everything that the book said. I understood what I need to do in my kitchen, how to reorganize my spices, and what things I should definitely throw away immediately. And I did that once we arrived home. But then I asked myself, what was it that I learned from 5 pages of reading? And the answer was, I learned how to organize my kitchen. I understood everything that the book said. The book is in English, and my brain immediately translated it. So I understood the message. I absorbed the message. I understood it in my first language. I didn't even ask myself what language it was, to be honest. When I was reading the book, I didn't even know what language it was. I was just absorbing ideas, and I was so fascinated by the ideas in the book that I kind of didn't really focus on the language. But I know that many students, when they read fiction and when they read books in English, they do focus on vocabulary. They start questioning words that they see. They want to look up words. But more advanced students, and I'm making this video for students who are more advanced and who want to improve, they simply, read the page. Sometimes they skim through a page or they scan a page. They understand the idea on this page, and then they say, but I know all the words here, so I can't really learn anything from this piece because I understand everything. There's no new information for me. Yes, the idea is interesting, but I haven't really learned anything. And this is exactly what I have experienced today. Yes, I learned what I need to do. But did I learn anything to improve my English skills? I asked myself, do I remember any good vocabulary from those 5 pages? And the answer was no, because I was not paying attention. I read those 5 pages pretty fast. You have to understand that I read fast. I think all adults read fast, especially when we want to understand what's in it, and especially when we're in a rush, when we hurry to understand what's in a book. We read fast. And we don't pay attention because we don't focus on vocabulary, on word combinations, on the structure of the sentences, on the beauty of the language. So when I asked myself, what was it that I learned, or what is it that I remember from those 5 pages, the answer was, I don't know. And probably that is the experience for most people. This is why when I say you should be reading, you should be always reading out loud. So I went back to those pages. And as I came back, I started paying deliberate attention to what I was actually reading. I understood the ideas in the book, but then if I wanted to tell those ideas to someone else, I wouldn't know what words to use. I would use my words that I already know in the English language to communicate those ideas, but I wanted to tell those stories in beautiful language. I wanted to use Marie Kondo's language because her language was convincing. It actually did convince me to go to my kitchen and to reorganize stuff. What was this language like? What verbs and what words did she use? So I had to go back to the book. And this is what I teach all the time. And this is what I mean when I say attentiveness. you have to, just like with subtitles, do I watch videos with subtitles or do I watch videos without subtitles? You need to understand what's your purpose. If your purpose right now is to understand how to organize your home, just start reading a book and don't bother. Just read the book as much as you want, as much as you can. Enjoy the book. Organize or reorganize your kitchen, your pantry, your wardrobe. Really get into it. If you just want to sit back and relax and enjoy the movie, watch the movie. Don't bother about the subtitles or English words. Just relax. However, we need to understand when it is the time to relax or to, to learn something from a book so that we can immediately implement it. And when is the time to practice our English skills? And if you have chosen to practice your English skills, you don't read more than a page. And you don't watch more than, for me it's now 3 minutes. But if you're starting out, you don't watch more than 1 minute of a movie scene because we are practicing. Our goal now is not to watch the entire movie, but to improve our listening skills, our speaking skills, and to acquire more vocabulary. Trust me, people say a lot in 1 minute, and there can be many compelling messages on one page. We just need one compelling message or one compelling idea that can fit in one paragraph only, or maybe, you can find it on one page of text. When you read out loud, you actually need to focus on what you're reading. A lot of people will also say that when they read out loud, they're so focused on the form, on being correct, that they don't even understand what they're reading. So they can read a paragraph out loud, but then they need a moment to read the same paragraph silently to themselves to understand what was it that they read, because they were not paying attention, they were not listening, they were focused on saying the sentences right. And if this is the case with you, just practice more often, read more often, because we want to learn to hear ourselves and we want to synchronize those processes when we read and we understand what we are reading and we hear ourselves and we listen to ourselves at the same time and we care about communicating the message. Because if this is fragmented, if you can either read or listen or read silently or read out loud, then it's not a whole thing. It's not what you're doing is you're just also communicating a fragment of that information. You're not communicating the whole message to people. You should be the one who understands what message you're sending in the first place. This is why practice reading out loud, but one paragraph max, and it should be a paragraph that you love. You like it so much that you want to read it again and again because it makes so much sense to you, and the more you read it, the more sense it makes to you, right? The more you read it, the more you understand it and the more you enjoy it. Pick the paragraph that you really like. It can be a very simple paragraph. It doesn't have to be compelling. It doesn't have to be a quote. However, quotes are really good material. If you find a thought-provoking quote, a compelling message, usually it's very concise. It's 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3 sentences max if we talk about quotes. Choose a quote and give it the best you can. Read it out loud so that it matters, so that people can hear it, so that you can hear the depth of that message, so that you can shake the air with that message. It doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be meaningful and impactful. Let me show you how you can work with a quote. Let's take this one and try to read it together. The consequence of writing is that you must start by writing the wrong meanings in the wrong words. But keep writing until you get to the right meanings in the right words. Only in the end will you know what you're saying. Let's work with one more quote. It's a bit longer, but it's so worth reading. Expect anything worthwhile to take a long time. It's hard to better capture something so fundamental, yet so impatiently overlooked in our culture of immediacy. The myth of the overnight success is just that, a myth, as well as a reminder that our present definition of success needs serious returning. The flower doesn't go from bud to blossom in one sprightly burst, and yet, as a culture, we're disinterested in the tedium of the blossoming. But that's where all the real magic unfolds in the making of one's character and destiny. If you do the same thing, if you just read text and then if you just read books or texts and then you're disappointed that you haven't learned anything, it is not surprising, because you were not focused on learning anything. You were focused on understanding the content. You understand the message, your brain says, okay, we're done. There's no more work for us here to do. So if you choose to sit down and practice your language skills, you have to understand that it's going to be a short exercise. You don't want to spend a day. You don't want to spend an hour doing that. You should understand it's going to take a limited period of time, and you read no more than one paragraph, and you read it out loud many times as necessary, until you actually understand what you're reading, and you can read in such a way that people who listen to you also understand what it is that you're reading. It's a good idea to send your paragraph to someone you know, someone who cares about you, someone who can give you honest and straightforward feedback. If these people understand English, send your paragraph to them as a voice message and ask them if they understand what this message is about. And don't send them the text, just the audio message. I talk a lot about the art of learning, the skill to learn a language, and it consists of many, many elements and many nuances like this one. You have to read, yes, a lot, but how? That's the question. You have to learn, yes, a lot, but how? That's the real question. You need to practice, yes, but how? Daily, every other day, 30 minutes a day, 1 hour a day, 5 minutes a day. That's the question. And to me, at least, learning is creativity. I talk to advanced level students, to people who want to attain native-like fluency, to people who care to consistently improve their language skills. And at this point, you want to be creative. If you're not creative, you're going to feel stuck. And you should allow yourself to feel this freedom to create, to constantly create. What does creativity mean in the context of learning? Let me give you an example. I talk about creating your own practice routine. We have the word create right there, creating your practice routine. And students ask me, what does it mean to create your own practice routine? They want an instruction. Okay, I need to do this 5 exercises every single day, right? Or, okay, I need to do 1 exercise 30 minutes a day, right? Should I do it in the morning or should I do it in the evening? Should I spend 30 minutes doing this exercise? Oh, you said this exercise is going to take me 45 minutes, but it takes me 2 hours. They want an instruction that they can follow. Creativity is something different. First, you need to try all these different exercises. When we talk about the system of native-like fluency, we're talking about a limited number of exercises. Right now, I think there are 38 exercises that we have come up with students recently. But they're limited to 40, I think. There are no more than 40. And there are 38 for me, depending on my focus. And I'm going to talk about focus a bit later. But for students who are just starting out, this can be a pool of 5 exercises, or 15, or 20, or 22. It really depends on how many you can see right now at this point, where you are. Because when you're starting, working in this system, you can only see 5 exercises, and it's going to be so much, it's going to be overwhelming for you. When you're a little bit more advanced and you become comfortable with those 5 exercises, you're okay with adding 1 more or 2 more. And then you start seeing that, oh, there are 10, there are 12, there are 15, 25 exercises that I can also use to my benefit. And you feel very comfortable doing all of them at the same time, or doing some of them at the same time, or doing, many of them or some of them. Sometimes you want to do many. Sometimes you want to focus on 2 or 3, but you're very comfortable playing with them. The most important thing is that you have to adapt the schedule, the exercises, and the learning routine, the practice routine, to yourself, because we all have different lives. We all have different lifestyles. We have different schedules. Some people have children, some people don't have children, some people work from home, some people go to the office, some people live in the city, some people live in some remote locations. We all have different lifestyles, and we're all different personalities. So you need to understand what works best for you. There is no one standard that is right for everybody else. We all want to learn to do the same things. We all want to learn to speak fluently. We all want to learn to see the text, see a piece of text, let's say, and be able to read it immediately or as soon as you can. This is what I'm practicing right now, the speed of comprehension. Can I read this paragraph that I see for the first time so that it makes sense to me? Can I read it out loud so that it makes sense to other people? How fast can I scan it and say it out loud? That's just interesting for me to practice. But we all want to achieve the same result. How we get there is a whole different story. We all want to improve our pronunciation. We all want to get rid of patterns that just, we're stuck with them for some reason. We don't know how to get rid of them. We don't even remember how we got them. But they're annoying patterns and annoying mistakes that we keep repeating again and again. We all want to get rid of them, and instead we want to replace them with phrases and word combinations that sound natural to native speakers. But again, how you get there is a different story. And if you're the kind of person who needs structure, go ahead and create the structure for yourself. If you're the kind of person who needs a table with a set of exercises in one column, and there will be allocated time slots in the next column, there will be certain metrics in the next column, there will be boxes that you need to check off every time you do the exercise in the next column, go ahead and create this for yourself. If I see something like that, I'm immediately demotivated and I can never learn. If somebody gives me a system or a table like that, if somebody tells me, you should work on your English skills every Friday at 6:00 for 25 minutes, I will say no, thank you. Seriously, I just cannot follow somebody's instruction when it's so strict and so precise, because learning for me is a very creative process, and I need to be inspired. I need to be in the right mood. I need to work with the right content. But this is how I roll, right? Maybe you're very different, and maybe you're a more organized person that really functions that way. Most of my students that I speak to, I don't know, it just happens to be this way, and I'm also this kind of person, they're more spontaneous. And such rules are limiting. I see a beautiful piece of text, I want to read it immediately. I find a beautiful recipe on YouTube, I want to go and make it immediately. And if I have the time, I go and make it. If I don't have the time, I will save it on my Pinterest board and I come back to it as soon as I have the ingredients, or as soon as I have the time, or as soon as the time is right. But when it comes to practicing, because I have done this exercise so many times, I know how long each will take. Let's say if I see a beautiful text, I know subconsciously my mind already knows that it's not going to take longer than 15 minutes. So if I have 15 minutes, I just start reading, and 15 minutes later I'm done and I feel so satisfied. If I like something so much that I want to record myself, I take mental notes, maybe that, okay, I need to go back to this text later. Or if I have the time, I just do it immediately. If I watch a movie or I listen to a podcast and the idea resonates with me, I want to summarize it immediately. I immediately write down the word combinations that I think I need to use myself, and I will practice saying them out loud. I will practice internalizing them, because you need to say these new word combinations out loud. They don't have to be necessarily very new. We're not talking about stuff you have never heard before. We're talking about word combinations that you understand, you recognize them, but you would have never said it yourself this way. You would probably, let me give you an example. A very natural way of saying, I've never thought about it, is, it never crossed my mind. It never crossed my mind that there can be a problem. It never crossed my mind. But instead, you probably would have said something like, I never thought, I didn't know, I could not imagine, things like that. But when you see native speakers, or when you hear native speakers say, it never crossed my mind, you want to use that as well. It never crossed my mind that we might have a problem or that this can be an issue. And this would be the word combination that I will write down. I understand it. I don't need a dictionary to translate it, to understand it. I just need to write it down, internalize it, and listen to many more examples of native speakers using the same word combination in different contexts. That's it. So I will listen to more examples, maybe on Youglish, maybe on YouTube, maybe on other sources, and I will say it out loud as much as I can. This is what I will do. And if I have the time, I will do it immediately. If I don't have the time right now, I'll bookmark that podcast and I'll go back to it when I have the time. So if I already bookmarked something, it means I don't need to look for content when I want to practice. When I have the time to practice, I'm already inspired by the idea of going back to that podcast. So I just sit down, open the link, and start working immediately. I do not spend my time choosing materials to practice. I put together a resource library for myself in the first place. Everybody who's taken the listening course and everybody who works with me individually enjoys the library. They have access to it. And again, they also do not need to look for stuff, to look for podcasts, to look for books, to look for movies. You can pick from a variety of different materials, just anything that resonates with you today, and start working. The algorithm is in every chapter. So there is a step-by-step tutorial and a step-by-step algorithm that describes how you should work with every piece of context depending on what you're focusing on and depending on what your level is today. This is why being creative means understanding how you learn. So many students feel guilty that they cannot sit down and spend 45 minutes of uninterrupted time learning. And they feel guilty that they do not finish an exercise, so they have to go to bed, they have to interrupt the exercise, and they have to go and cook something for their kids. They have to go and just have, sleep actually, or they have to go and answer that phone call. I often will complete the exercise if it's reading or if it's something short, but very often I will take my time to complete the exercise, and I can take up to a week to complete one exercise. Sometimes I like a podcast that so much that I want to transcribe the most profound ideas. I don't want just to summarize it in my own words. I want to transcribe it and to learn how they did it, what language they used. And if I want to transcribe a podcast, I know this will take time. So I can sit down and transcribe for 10 minutes today. Usually I just type it immediately in the notes app on my phone, and then I have 10 more minutes tomorrow, and I have 10 more minutes the next day. And when I do it many days in a row, it works even better for me, because I go back to the same content again and again. I listen to the same podcast again and again, and every time I listen to it, I understand more, I remember more, and the word combinations and the ideas that I'm listening to, they make even more sense to me. And when I write them down, and when I transcribe them, I can retain a lot more information than if I just simply listen to it one time. So many students think that listening to a podcast means listening to a 45-minute long podcast and never going back to it. And that counts as, okay, I can check off that box. I did something for my English routine. I watched the 3-hour-long movie. Okay, done. But ask yourself, what is it that you retained? What is it that you learned? Remember the story with that book. Yes, I read 5 pages. I understood the idea. But did I do anything to improve my English skills? That's the question. You have to know how you learn. To learn how you learn, you need to try many different exercises. You need to time yourself. How long does it take you to do the exercise? And we're talking about, as I said, a limited number of exercises. And the first 3 months are there for people to try them out, to see how they work for them, to see what exercises make them happy, to see what exercises are the most difficult for them, to see what exercises bring most joy, and what exercises they need to repeat again and again, because we have uncovered some weak spots. when you understand how you should organize your day and your practice routine, this is so much easier. Really, you don't feel guilty for not completing an exercise. You don't feel guilty for spending only 1 hour or only 2 minutes or only 15 minutes, because you know what you're doing. I'm totally okay with being spontaneous, and I'd never tell my students exactly when they need to practice, exactly what vocabulary they need to learn. They need to figure this out on their own. But in order to be spontaneous, this is what most people struggle with. They understand that, okay, I want to be spontaneous. You can only be spontaneous after you have rehearsed enough. When I teach public speaking, I give everybody notebooks, and this quote is on the cover of the notebook. And again, it says, you can only be spontaneous after you have rehearsed enough. Confidence always comes from competence. If you have done it 1,000,000 times, you can do it one more time, no problem. You feel confident because you can do it. You've done it many times. I can do it again. You can be spontaneous when you have practiced enough. When you have practiced being prepared, and then you become very comfortable with not being prepared. Because a spontaneous conversation is spontaneous. You can never be prepared for something spontaneous because you're not alone. It's a conversation. You can prepare what you will say, but you can never be prepared for what people can, or might, or will reply, or will say to you. You can never predict other people's behavior, and it's good for everybody. When we can be spontaneous, when we can feel each other, and when we are confident that the words will come. You have to trust yourself and know that the words will come. Again, I've done it so many times. I can never be prepared, and I'm very, very okay with that. You can only give to people what you have inside you. You're filled with something, and this is what you can give away. And it's, it just makes more sense to me to practice filling yourself with the right energy, with the right emotion, with the right thinking, right? So organizing your own thought process and organizing and managing your own inner state is way, way more important than trying to control every word that you will say. Because when people are afraid of being spontaneous, they're afraid to lose control. They want to know exactly what they can say, what they will say, but even if they learn what they want to say by heart, even if they're 100% prepared, they lose this confidence the second somebody says something they didn't expect, or the second there's a technical problem, they lose all their confidence. And these things will happen. You will forget words, people will interrupt you, technical problems will occur, people will ask uncomfortable questions, people will ask you something you have no idea about. How do you react in this situation? So to me, it's very important to be okay with not being prepared and to know how to deal with such situations. The only way to learn how to handle such situations is to be in such situations very often. When you have done it so many times, you're not afraid to do it one more time. This is what I wanted to say about being spontaneous. So you can be spontaneous only after you have rehearsed enough, after you have practiced enough. So in order to be spontaneous with your practice routine, you need to know what you're doing. Because if you decided to be spontaneous and to improve your English because you have 20 minutes now, but you have no idea what you can do in this 20 minutes, you'll be just wasting your time. As I said, we have a pool of exercises. The first thing we do is we try different exercises. Usually it takes 3 months. And whenever I start working with new students, I tell them, look, it will take 3 months for you to understand how the system works, roughly, to try it out. And then you make a decision if you want to continue or you want to stop. And it's perfectly okay if this is not for you, or if you want to quit, or if you take only as much as you need right now and you move on. And people who want to continue, they stay. And they go deeper into the system, and they apply it every day, and they learn more nuances. But my point is that you need to try those exercises to create a pool of exercises that you need right now. let's say if your pool of exercises consists of 7 exercises that you need to focus on right now, maybe you at this point you need to improve your pronunciation, you need to focus on your vowels, you need to learn the difference between food and book, right? So the spelling is the same, the sounds are completely different. You want to focus on removing filler words. You need to learn to understand where you need to pause and how to chunk sentences, and you want to remove uptalk. That's already a lot. Let's say if this is what you need to focus on right now, because you deliver a lot of presentations in English, and this is your thing, this is your issue, just stick to these 7 exercises and organize your routine. Do not really think about anything else. So when you have tried all the 7 exercises, when you know how to do them, how long it takes you to complete them, when you know what it means to complete the exercise, what metrics you use in this metrical system, in this measurement system, and you know how to receive feedback and how to work with feedback, that is more than enough. Organize your routine so that you can do these 7 exercises on your own schedule and on your own time, and you really learn. You learn. How do you know that you have learned something? To me, it means that I can apply it in my own life, in my own situations. And you can adapt the exercises as much as you can, because as I said, we all have different lifestyles. Adapt it, see what works best for you, but stick to those 7 exercises and make sure that you complete them. So you need to know what you're doing. You need to know what it means to complete an exercise, because if you do the exercises but you never complete them, yeah, you were doing something, but did you actually get anything done? Just like, again, with this example with the book. Yes, I read 5 pages, but did I learn anything? Yes, I watched a movie, but did I do anything to improve my English skills? Not really. And just work with these 7 exercises until you know that you can move on, and you should move on because you have done what you should have done at this point, and you really notice improvements. And then move on, because as these skills improve, when you get the hang of those vowels, when you learn to remove filler words, when you learn to go down at the end of your sentences instead of continuous uptalk, when you learn that, you will see more opportunities, and you will see what the next thing is that you need to learn. It will come naturally, and it will be very easy, trust me. Very easy to see. When you're just starting out, it's very hard to see what's next, and how much of it, and how long, and when will it all end. This is an infinite process, and only you decide at which point you want to stop. I think a lifetime is not enough to improve the quality of your communication and to improve the quality of your language skills. But what I preach and what I teach is that when you understand how this works, you can continue on your own, and you can continue on your own schedule, because this is your life. You're learning a skill to implement it in your life. And when you have done it enough times, you are confident that you can now do it on your own. You don't really need to work with a private teacher all your life. You can continue practicing the skill on your own. But you can always share feedback, and it doesn't have to be sessions that you need to pay for. You just keep communicating with those people who are practicing the same thing, the same skill, and you learn from one another. But to learn the system, you probably do need a coach. To learn the system, to understand how it works, to use it to your benefit, and then you can work on your own. And as I said, a lifetime is not enough to become perfect here, because there's always something you can learn. You change as a person, your mindset changes, your circumstances change, and even when you look at the same things, at the same lessons, at the same materials, 6 months later or 3 years later, you see that it's just different, or you understand that when you looked at it 3 years ago, you saw nothing, because now you actually see it for what it is. So in order to be spontaneous, you need to know what you're doing. So create this pool of exercises for yourself, understand how long it takes you to do them so that you can complete them. And then you can create a plan for yourself, and you you can structure your routine a little bit better. So instead of planning something in advance, something you have never done before, it's just impossible. So many people do that, I don't know why, but you cannot really plan something you have never done before. If you say to yourself, okay, I'm gonna practice my English skills 1 hour every week, 1 hour every day, 6 days a week, most likely you will fail. And most people say, after a week, they say, you know what, I realized I don't have 1 hour every day. I thought I do, but I don't have 1 hour every day. So you need to understand how much time do you really have, and instead of planning in advance, do something for a week or for a month, then look back at your month in retrospect and see what you actually got done. This is good material. And then you can plan ahead based on what you can afford, on how much time you can afford, on how you feel when you do those exercises, and how much time you actually have in your day and in your week. So these are the prerequisites for being spontaneous, I would say. It's okay to be spontaneous, but you need to know what you're doing. Otherwise, you can't really be spontaneous. You will just end up having that moment of joy. Wow, I have 30 minutes of free time, but I have no idea what I should be doing with this 30 minutes of time. It's all about spending your time mindfully and knowing what you're doing. And it's a good feeling when after 30 minutes, you know that you have completed an exercise, the exercise that you were actually doing. You know that you're done. And it's just a good feeling. You have this sense of accomplishment that motivates you to continue. When you create a plan moving forward, only after you have spent a month or at least 3 months doing those exercises, this is where you need to learn to be creative. Learning to be creative means you can schedule your practice routine on your own. You can change the exercises based on what your focus is right now and based on what you need to improve. And being creative here means looking for content and choosing content. People forget that they can choose. They're looking for somebody to teach them. They're looking for somebody to give them content. And my philosophy is completely the opposite. Any website becomes your textbook. Any YouTube video, any podcast, anything that you genuinely like can become, in English of course, in the English language, in the target language, depending on what language you're learning, it can become your textbook, and it can become the best material for you to improve your fluency. And as I said, my resource library is designed exactly for that. I create my own content and I share it with students because I keep doing those exercises myself. But when you can find the content that you need, life becomes so much easier because you really spend seconds. Sometimes you have the feeling that you don't actually need to look for anything because everything you need just finds you. You just bump into stuff that you need. It feels really effortless. You just see it everywhere, but you need to train your brain to work in this direction and to function that way. And being creative also means improvising. Improvising means you can change the focus of the exercise. Like, what does it mean to change the focus? Let's say the exercise is the same. You read a fiction book out loud, but your focus can be very different. Your focus can be to acquire new vocabulary. So you sit down and you read a paragraph focusing on the new vocabulary, focusing on the word combinations that can help you sound more fluent and more eloquent and more articulate. My focus can also be my pronunciation. So I want to listen to a native speaker who reads the same paragraph out loud. Maybe I'm going to listen to an audiobook and I want to imitate it, and I want to learn to imitate the inflections, the intonations, the tone, the rhythm, the accent, depending on what I'm practicing. Maybe I want to improve my accent. So and I always tell students it's a good decision to make early on. Do you want to sound more American or more British? And depending on your decision, you will be choosing audiobooks narrated by Americans or by British people. If this is your focus, you only focus on the content, on the accent, but you need to find audiobooks narrated by either British or American narrators. What else? I also have a few real-time video lessons in my library where my focus is, when I read, is to identify thought chunks. If I want to learn to chunk my messages properly, I will read with this intention, keeping this in mind. So you see, the exercise is the same. Read one paragraph, but how you do it depends on what your focus is. And when I say you can be creative with your practice routine, it means you decide what your practice is today. Of course, when you're just starting out, you cannot decide for yourself because you have no idea what the focus can be and how this all works, and how will I know that I have completed the exercise, and how does the exact algorithm work. You need to get the hang of it. You need to practice before you gain that confidence that you can now do it yourself on your own. I recently asked a student of mine, a student who has been working in the Native Like Fluency group for a year. We were looking at her progress, and I asked her, look, this is what you still need. I told her, this is what you still need to practice. Clarity and concise messages. What exercises do you think you need to do to practice communicating with more clarity? And she gave me 5 exercises just off the top of her head. Immediately she said, I need to be doing this. And I asked her, so you see, if I tell you that you need to organize your practice routine so that you practice clarity, so that your focus is improving clarity, do you know what you need to be doing? And she said, yes, of course, these 5 exercises, and I already know in what order and how I can do them. And then I asked her, so what if I had asked you this question 6 months ago? And she said, 6 months ago, I would have had no idea what you want from me. This would have been a very complicated question. So think about it. If I tell you now, go ahead and organize your practice routine so that your focus is improving the rhythm, or so that your focus is improving your pronunciation, or so that your focus is getting rid of annoying patterns that you keep repeating, will you know what to do? And will you know how to organize and structure your practice routine so that you actually get there step by step, and you know how to track your own progress? And this is exactly what we learn in the Native Like Fluency group. This is a group where we practice together and we learn how we should learn the language so that we continue learning and so that we continue improving without being dependent on anybody's schedule, without being dependent on the availability of certain textbooks or any textbooks, without being dependent on the internet, without being dependent on other people. But we focus on truly understanding how we roll, how we function, how we learn, what our personality is like. We never actually need to copy other people. Nobody needs to learn to become me, and I don't need to learn to become other people. We all are different, yet we're all the same, kind of. We're just all probably at different stages. The only difference between students and myself is that I have, maybe 10, 15 years more experience, but I have been doing the same exercises over and over again, and I have never gotten tired of them. I haven't. Seriously, I've been doing them for years, and I, just like with running, I've been running for years, and I haven't got tired of running. I haven't gotten tired of working out. I still like it because there's always novelty. And when we talk about creativity means novelty. The problem with English courses is that when you work with a textbook, once the textbook is over, it's over. You don't have more materials and you need to buy a new textbook, or you need to ask a teacher to bring you more materials. And once there's no more input or novelty, students feel demotivated. And what we learn here is we learn to create our own textbooks, we learn to organize our own practice materials. And again, it is not centered around a grammar topic or around any topic or around vocabulary. It is centered around you. It is centered around the student and students' interests, students' lifestyle, students' character, it is really, really way more important than present simple or past perfect or articles or anything else. This is why when the system that I teach is not really, it's not a set of topics, right, that we need to cover. It's a set of skills that we need to develop. It's not about language topics, it's about personal skills, attentiveness, listening skills, short-term memory. These are skills, these are personal skills. The system is not centered around present perfect, past simple, conditionals, and other grammar topics. Trust me, there are better ways to learn them. And everybody who works according to the system, they do improve their grammar and they learn to improve it and they learn how to do it best so that it works for them. But it's not about covering all those grammar topics and making sure that you have now completed the course and you have learned 1,000 more words and you know the third conditional and you know future and the past. No, it's not about that. It's centered around a student. It's the most human-centered approach I know. It works for me when I am genuinely interested in what I'm doing and when I understand the impact it can make on my life. Because again, I learn something so that I can apply it in my own life. I don't learn it with an intention to say done and put it away and never go back to it. Like, people who take a lot of notes with a very serious face as they listen to a 2-hour-long workshop, and then they put these notes away and they never go back to them and they never look at them. I don't think that's learning, actually. Being creative is very, very important. And being spontaneous can be a very good thing, but you need to know what you're doing. In order to be spontaneous, you need to have practiced quite a lot. And in order to be creative, you need to follow a certain structure. First you optimize, then you adapt, and only then you innovate. You cannot just start innovating when you know nothing about a subject or when you have never done it before. First, you need to follow a recipe to actually understand what happens if you mix these ingredients. And when you understand what happens and what reactions take place and what the outcome is if you follow the recipe to the letter, first you need to follow the recipe. Then you can innovate. Then you can change the ingredients. Then you can understand how you need to play with ingredients to change the texture, to decrease the level of sweetness or to increase it, right? But first you need to follow a certain structure. If you have any questions about creating your own learning routine or practice routine, ask me in the comments, and let's be creative with our learning process. That's the only way forward.